All right, so I want to talk about like my walk, like from living in darkness, where practicing homosexuality, and how there was this chase for answers, essentially, trying to understand, how did I get here, like how do I overcome this darkness. And while going through that whole entire journey trying to find answers, I realized in the end, I was shown in the end that the thing that I was the specific types of people that I was chasing after, those people had the same issues that I had. But for some reason in my head, the lie that I was believing was that these people were not free. These people were not free. They didn't have the same issue. And once you realize, it's not like misery, maybe in some ways it's like misery likes company, but once you realize that you are in the same struggle as somebody else, the appeal to go chasing after, it's no longer appealing. You only go after things that you feel is unattainable. Well, typically speaking, people go after things that they feel is unattainable, or that is a goal or an objective, not something that they already have, And so I feel like within this walk, there was a lot of unhealed wounds, a lot of insecurity, a lot of things that I had going on in my life that I didn't realize had such an adverse effect on my perspective, how I was looking at myself, and more so looking at people. And so, and once you start coming into agreement with a lot of those lies, and you repeat it over and over and over, that becomes like an imprint in the brain. The brain then puts you in autopilot and thinks that, guess what? Your whole life has to revolve around seeing people from this perspective. So my brain was in fight or flight mode all the time, assessing whether or not somebody is assessing the risk factor, whether or not there was some sort of fear. Did that person pose something that I would be intimidated by? And if so, if that was something that I would be intimidated by, that would bring some sort of jealousy or envy, then it was just like a completely just nasty dance that I just kept having to I just had to try to make sense of. And I don't think I had it figured out until I finally got to the point where I realized, okay, I have to go, and this happened a few times, like I told myself, you know what, I have to start this whole entire thing over. I have to start from scratch to see how my thoughts, like what triggers these thoughts. I need to hear these thoughts. I need to hear what's happening that's leading me. I want to hear that perspective. I literally had to walk that. So I said, I'm going to walk this thing through again. But I knew that, there were some past trauma from previous experiences when I first started getting sexually as an adult, like 18-ish. I had some experiences, and it was those traumas that had this cloud over me, because it wasn't necessarily consensual, where I put myself in situations where in some ways I was abused. So that required some healing. And it's just very interesting that the way it's portrayed, that freedom just happens overnight, and you don't realize that freedom doesn't happen until you start to heal. You literally have to forgive. You literally have to walk out your problems, and that requires having an honest heart. And the thing about honesty is that you can be honest and truthful, but that's relative. Because what you may think is the truth can be a big old lie, you know? So, yeah, the whole entire experience for me was very trying. It wasn't a pleasant one, because whenever you're going through anything and you don't have that control, you don't have the ability to move away, it takes it it feels some type of way. You feel some type of way. You're not in control. You don't have the wisdom that would give you the understanding and therefore the perspective necessary to free yourself from this scenario. So you're essentially waiting for God to provide that wisdom on the scenario and the situation. And I had to learn about that. I had to learn about the testing. There were so many things that one would have to go through. Well, I had to go through. But I'm hoping that by making these videos, I can speed track somebody and they don't have to go through the many years of failing and stumbling and falling the way I did, you know, because it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. But it was obviously necessary, because I know that if I am very transparent and honest about my walk, and it's going to be much easier for someone to walk in that understanding that you truly have to follow what's happening on your heart, because that's where God speaks. And if there is darkness there, you have to acknowledge that it's there. You can't kind of bypass it and try to suppress it and hide it from him. You literally have to acknowledge, like, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm hearing. You truly have to have an open and honest dialogue about your feelings and your emotions, and bring it to the submission of the Spirit. I mean, you literally have to do that, and that has to be your consistent routine, because if you filter these thoughts through God before you act on them, it diminishes the enemy's power. And by knowing that, once it recognizes that you now know that the flesh was driving the vehicle, and you want the Spirit to drive the vehicle, which means that you have to actually slow down and not rush. It's gonna change your life. It's gonna change your perspective on life. It's gonna change how you live your life, because you're no longer depending on self to provide answer, solution, protection. You're depending on God to deliver you from these horrible situations. Hopefully this makes sense to someone, and just know that healing is definitely, even when it feels as though you it's like, how can you heal someone who is so broken? I can assure you, I'm definitely up there as it pertains to the brokenness, the unhealedness, the sins. I mean, everything you name it, I've done it, been through. It's not my first rodeo, and there's nothing. I'm not saying that as a gloat, because there's obviously nothing to gloat about by living a sinful life, but I'm saying that to show God's mercy and God's grace for people who are willing to give up their whole entire identity to seek his face. That's what this is about. Are you willing to seek the Lord's face? Because of your heart, are you willing to give up the dirt that's on your heart and hand it over? He doesn't want some of it. He wants all of it. And once you're really ready to submit fully, and you're willing to give him all of you and everything of you, you're going to see your breakthrough. And like I said, it's not going to happen the way you anticipate. The misconception is that when you have some sort of like idea of how things are supposed to happen, that's what's going to get you caught up, because that opens the door for an expectation and disappointment. Just let God run the show. This is not his first rodeo. You're not the first person he's delivering that's been in the scenario. Like scripture says, there's nothing new under the sun. There's no wickedness that you've ever done that he's not heard or seen, or like nothing's new. So I just want this to be a video of encouragement to somebody out there who feels hopeless and just wants to be done and wants to be free, but it's just not happening. Like I said, for me, it took 12 years. It took 12 years, 12 plus years to see my breakthrough. Literally, I was walking, thinking I'm going in the right direction, only to find out while going to the beach that I was going in the complete opposite direction. Yep, for 12 years, walking. But strangely enough, I thought I was going to start going back to year one, but that's not what he did. 12 years of walking, going in the wrong direction, and then acknowledging that I was going the wrong direction, started going in the right direction. And when I started walking in the right direction, that's when my breakthrough occurred. But like I said, we just truly have to submit and trust God. Trust his process, trust his ways. He's all-knowing, he's all-powerful. He is your God. He's a good God. God bless you.